Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy, and Novak Djokovic is now just one win away from his 20th Grand Slam title, which would equal Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. He has defeated Denis Shapovalov in straight sets on Friday's semifinal, but it was a lot closer than a straight set victory would suggest. Amy, what'd you think of that match? Just those big moments, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys thought the last match was close, then you must have thought this was like super, super tight. I can't wait to see what you say when it's like 5 sets or something. But I actually thought that for a semifinal, that while it was a very entertaining match, it was not as close as the score would indicate. And that is because Novak had a real handle on his game plan. And we talked about it, Gil. We said, would you rally to the backhand? Would you go to the backhand or would you go to the forehand? Because so often you go to the forehand because that's the shot that draws a ton of errors. But with Shapovalov, he's kind of a horse of a different color. He's got that flashy backhand that can be very offensive, but when it misses big. And even though Shapovalov used that backhand to get the break early in the first set, Novak got his legs under him. He stuck to his game plan. He kept going at the backhand, and it actually broke down very quickly.
Well, also then Denis's forehand betrayed him on probably a point he'll take for a long time, serving for the first set, 5-4, 30 all, opens up the rally with a great cross-court backhand. But again, that's the shot he always hits. It's a lot of times it's the cross-court backhand. So Novak reads it. So Novak gets to it in true Gumby-like fashion. But Denis has a pretty makeable forehand to hit cross-court, and he misses it. And from there, I felt the air went out of the balloon. And it reminds me, I have a quote I want to read from a book, this book I love called A Handful of Summers, about the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s by Gordon Forbes. And he's writing about another left-hander at Wimbledon. He's writing about Jimmy Connors. And this made me think, this I thought of while I was watching Denis. He goes, he's playing too perfectly altogether, like a complicated machine that has been finely programmed to hit hundreds of risky winners and then been overwound. Watching him, one senses overkill. Feels instinctively that his best shots would be worth more than only 1 point. Can't keep doing that, one mutters. And of course he can't. So we just saw how Denis is kind of like he's right up there at the redlining stage. And it'll be interesting as we preview the upcoming final. But it's kind of one of those matches that was tight and it wasn't. It was kind of strange, wasn't it? Particularly, I think, once that first set went. That tiebreaker.
I just thought it was tight. Yeah, if I could. I mean, to me, I think it was closer than the score indicates because now I don't think. I mean, Shapovalov won more total points through 2 sets than Djokovic. He was down 2 sets to love. Like for me,
that stat, which is why that stat I think is whatever.
Yeah, but it suggests Novak won the important points, the pressure points. He was much less mistake prone in the biggest moments, and he was serving his serving was very, very clutch. But the tiebreak was a mess by both of them. It was just less of a mess by Djokovic, the first set tiebreak. And I think that goes back to
the 2019 final. No, I mean, it's funny. It's funny.
It felt like that.
Like Denis is getting all these shot placement points, and there's Novak airtight, hunkering down. Yeah, that tiebreak was not exactly vintage form from him either, but it was good enough to kind of extricate from it. But I thought once Djokovic won the first set, it also reminded me of you have these people who you've played a lot of times, and you know that as much as they press you at 4-all, they'll blink. Time to blink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's that player that doesn't quite have a handle on when to not bring out the offense. Like if you're truly on defense, I don't care if you're playing Novak Djokovic and you think you have to go for broke. You got to put the ball back in the court. You have to. And I thought that Novak actually bested him at the net, both in terms of volleys, just soundness of volleys, making volleys, volley winners, He also bested him in retrievals where he had to run up and get the drop shot. Denis missed any number of those, even though if the two guys were in a 40-yard dash, I think Denis might win. But somehow Novak is more efficient. And when he runs up to the net to retrieve a drop shot, he has a game plan. He
I think he's
doesn't,
got better. I think he's got better hands. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. He also is it's a 3-yard game. Tennis, you know what I mean? We don't lose matches because we can't get the ball. And you see, like you said, how you use sort of efficiency. That's so good.
yeah. So, yeah, and you guys know, like, I'm not really big on unforced errors. I think it should all be errors, and we can talk about that at another time. But whomever was the official scorer for IBM, they put the unforced errors at 15 to 36. So Shapovalov had 36 unforced errors, as they called it.
And if I can add something to that, 8 of those 15 unforced errors by Djokovic were in the first set, where he was at his lowest level. I think of the 3, I think he got better and better as the match wore on. But I also, I think in terms of Djokovic's winners, I would go back to where you started with the net play, Amy. It was absolutely enormous for Novak, because I don't think the meat and potatoes of Djokovic's game really arrived until maybe the third set, where he started hitting his ground strokes with a little bit better depth and just a bit harder. But he was 28 for 33 at the net. It's 85% net points won. And I feel like out of his 33 winners, I think at least 20 of them were probably at the net. So to me, like, that's, man, I mean, we think of that as more of a Nadal play or a Federer play, but here Novak is, okay, the ground stroke game that's usually there for me, it's not there. I'm going to serve and volley in big points. I'm going to work my way in. And that's going to enable me to, I don't need to hit 4 great forehands to win this point. I'll hit 2 good forehands and finish at the net.
And serve and volley is a really good play against a one-handed backhand returner, unless they really have it some efficiency, and these guys haven't done enough. I mean, guys like Pete Sampras or Patrick Rafter, and Edberg, they learned how to use their one-hander appropriately. But these guys like Shapovalov and Tsitsipas, who take these big swings and rallies, suddenly there's a guy at net. And on grass, that is not good math. And Novak 20 to 33 at net, that is fantastic. It's not like I'm sorry.
He did say, when I think we talked about this last show, he was asked, how has your game improved over the past decade? And he said net. That was the first thing he said. And you guys are right. Like, we don't really think of him being great at the net, but it just dawns on you watching a match like this that he is so much more sound than the next gen guys, really.
Well, he's adding just these parts to the arsenal. He's already got a lead of being good, and now he's just adding yet more parts. It's like a basketball player adding another direction he can go and different things he can do. And it's it's really impressive to watch how he applies pressure like that to come in, to add those parts to his game. And why not? I mean, someone asked me a few years ago when Edberg was working with Federer, is he having to come up to net more? I go, well, I never heard a coach tell a player to come up to net less. You rarely hear a coach tell a player, come up to net less. And I think the way Novak's doing it 33 times, it's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. He found his way. Again, the serve volley, I think it was something like 11 for 12. And it was normally on the deuce side. He'd serve wide to Shapovalov's backhand and get that done. But, I think Shapovalov was 1 for 11 on break points converted. And Joel, you said, is it 2019? It kind of reminded me of that. How would you describe or reason with the trend that we see with Djokovic, where so often he probably has his B game? I don't think today was the A game. And the opponent, Shapovalov, he was game. He did not go away. He did not fold. He served and played great first strike tennis for all 3 sets for large periods of time. But when it really counts on the big points, Novak's coming through. And this has been the case, I think, for the last couple years, even more so than it has been throughout his career.
Billie Jean King once told me, she goes, the better players, we just choke 10% less. So his ability to kind of like hang there and maybe, I'm not even sure if so much to raise the game or maintain the game. And then you realize a guy like the players who are coming after him, like Shapovalov, and we're going to talk about this with Berrettini for the final. They're sprung up, man. They're pushing the edge of it. And Novak, he's so aware of how much he can do and not do. I mean, he's such efficient in and to measure the ball and to more or less think, can you really come up with those shots? I mean, serve wide in the deuce court against a guy who has a backhand return like that? Absolutely. And pretty much cover the backhand volley. I mean, if Denis with that swing is going to hit a cross-court backhand wide past him on grass against a serving volleyer, wow, okay, let's call Rod Laver. But he's not there, and we don't know if he's going to. And the thing with him, we don't know if he's going to get there yet. And we're having to see, though, the styles that are evolving among these aspirants, and to see, though, if they're going to be able to beat some of the three, or is it just the three are going to age out and then leave it vacant anyway.
Well, if shots 0-4, and we know that most of the game is played within 0-4, we know that statistically. Shots 0-4 have been compared to an earthquake or a storm, and I feel like nobody survives the earthquake better than Djokovic. And it was almost easy today. It was like, all I got to do is just survive the earthquake and go to this guy's backhand. He'll make an error, and he'll get jumpy. And I feel like that's what happened. And yeah, it was a good match. It was a close match, as three setters go, as straight sets go. But in many ways, what I saw was pretty easy for Novak.
I guess, I mean, I think there was again, Shapovalov holding at love a lot because of just, making first serves and just brutalizing ground strokes behind it. And I guess there's a certain comfort level with Novak where, okay, you just hit 3 winners and held at love and, hit a service winner. Like, that's fine. That's one game. Good job. Now I'll hold. There is a certain calmness where some players are going to almost lose the script when their opponents are doing that to them in a way that's like panicky. But there's no panic, because Novak feels like, okay, eventually I'll get into that game and I'll be able to apply the pressure. So
he's got at
maybe
least
that's why
he's got at least 19 reasons to not panic. Just like, and the 2 other guys we talk about, they have 20 each. So experience and playing people a lot and seeing, it's like, see how that kind of goes. I mean, I think in a way, the way that we're describing this match, we're seeing, well, okay, even if Denis wins that first set, what do you think? You're going to keep that up? Really, young man? And so that's kind of the thing about how he's so good at, I like that term about surviving the earthquake. That's right. It's like weathering the storm. And here it comes. And okay, you've got it. And you're holding it love and you're slashing these winners. But again, it's an interesting test. And I think it speaks to what I'm excited to see in both Shapovalov and Berrettini is the style it needs to take the game of tomorrow. And actually, it makes me excited about the future of tennis, about the kinds of players we're going to see emerging that are trying to solve the problems created by these three. We've seen it with people being Federer. We only saw it with Novak, and we only saw it with Rafa on clay versus someone like Novak. But it's just interesting to see how these styles are evolving, these playing styles. Big shots, big serves, aggression.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on then. Let's move on to the next one to see if the next modern forehand can do a better job of conquering Novak Djokovic on his quest. So Joel, I guess how do you see the differences between Berrettini and Shapovalov, and what can he do to be tomorrow's game a little bit better than Shapo was able to?
Well, I think with Berrettini is the more obvious sword and shield, and I'm going to attempt to eventually blow up that dichotomy a little bit, but Berrettini is a little bit more, I think there's a little bit more consistency and mobility. The righty forehand, the serve, the backhand, he kind of manages it. He's not trying to be exceptionally dynamic with it. He's trying to use it to elicit the forehand he wants. I don't think Denis, between being lefty and his love of that topspin backhand, I don't think he quite has the cocktail mix down yet. What do you make of that, Amy?
Shapo, I think it was you, Joel, who said on a previous podcast that a lot of these guys are trying to win playing their own game, and it doesn't even occur to them to win disrupting the other guy. And I thought it was a classic case of Shapo trying to win playing his own game, not even giving a thought about what could draw some errors out of Novak here, or what can I do? Where can I place the ball that Novak, makes him a little more statistically uncomfortable? It didn't even seem to occur to him. I mean, he was just like gunning for the stars. And to me, that's why the match was easy pickings. Now, I do think that Berrettini plays a little more strategically. And it goes beyond, I mean, yeah, he served great today. I mean, if the guy doesn't serve great, forget it. He's out. That's just his weapon, and it's got to be on. But it has been throughout the entire tournament. He's been very consistent with it. I just think that strategically against Novak, he's going to have to come up with something that is, it's not just going out there and trying to rally with him, or it's got to be more thought out than that.
Well, the first striking, we saw they had the tight Roland Garros quarterfinal, and that gave more time to each. So I'm kind of trying to think out, does this grass make it easier for Novak to get into the 0-4? I'm coming after that backhand somehow, and now you got to deal with it. Or does it make it easier for Berrettini with the big serve and the big forehand? Because I think the difference between Berrettini and Shapovalov is that Denis is looking for big shots on both sides because he pretty much thinks he has them, but that gets him sometimes confused about what to do with the backhand and what to do with the forehand. Whereas Berrettini is pretty clear on the pattern. I'm not gonna try to hit a backhand winner, ever, really. And I'm gonna use the backhand to set up the forehand. Fernando Gonzalez, Victor Pecci, Andy Roddick to some degree, this was a play that those guys ran. So I think there's a little bit more streamlined thinking process in Berrettini than there was in Shapovalov.
If I could jump in before Gill gives his thoughts on that. On the ESPN telecast today, actually Berrettini was compared delightfully to Barty, instead of comparing him to some guy, which was really interesting to me, because they said that Barty uses her slice to set up her forehand. She has a great serve. It's like, very similar game style. So I really agreed with that. I thought it was a good observation. And I love it when a man is compared to a woman.
I think that's pretty interesting. I would contend, and this is where this gives me the chance to kind of crack into my annihilating the sword shield thing on behalf of Barty and Novak. I think Barty uses the slice for more offense than Berrettini does. I think Barty uses it. She can generate traction in the point in the rally more. Berrettini does it sort of too, but he still wants to look for the forehand. I think she can do things with it. But I heard that point too on the telecast, and how making each hit backhand passing shots is a port of entry, is a way to get into the point in a certain way. And again, so this is where I want to, I was reading up on the sword shield thing about how the forehand is the big thing and the backhand. But I think I'm going to talk on Novak's behalf. Novak wins. He could be on the way to becoming only the third man to win all four majors in a year, the true Grand Slam, and they got the Golden Slam and all that. The other people who also did it, Don Budge and Rod Laver, were both backhand geniuses. Were both people who Don Budge had the first contemporary backhand, big drive based on a lefty baseball swing. Rod Laver, the first lefty with a topspin backhand, so that he copied to some degree after Budge. Novak's backhand, we know it's something more than a shield.
That's
much more.
Yeah. So that whole dichotomy. But anyway, that's my little sword and shield riff.
Novak's forehand, but biomechanically is still a bigger shot, but I agree that it's degrading to call a shot that applies so much pressure on their opponents as just a defensive weapon, which is a shield.
I also looked very closely and was actually starting to chart the Berrettini match and the semifinal from today. And I think what he did was, I mean, the serve plus one is the big thing, right? That's the big thing now. You know, you got to win with the serve plus one. You look for the forehand after the serve. I think the truly elite players now, like Berrettini, Djokovic, Nadal, they're starting now to eliminate their opponent's serve plus one. They're thinking not just in terms of their own plus one, but how do I make sure the other guy doesn't get the serve plus one by hitting to a certain zone in the court. And the thing I noticed was that Hurkacz was making a lot of errors on his serve plus one forehand, and Berrettini seemed to be hitting to zone B, which would be sort of his jammed forehand position. So I don't know if that's something that a place where Novak also makes errors. I know Novak doesn't really make a lot of errors. So.
Nowhere, Amy. Nowhere. There's no.
Everybody makes errors, or even if it's like one or two more from this zone of the court, everybody makes errors. But that's definitely where I saw Berrettini getting Hurkacz today.
Yeah, no question. Well, Hurkacz had a little more forehand technique, not nearly as contemporary dynamic as Berrettini. I mean, it's almost a little bit of an old school. Yeah. A little bit reminds me, you can see some of the comparisons between him and Medvedev. A little bit more of an absorber, redirect, a little bit more from some of the older era. Go further back, he'd almost have a continental grip. I mean, his forehand really kind of did do things for him the way it had versus the more flatter hitting Federer. And Berrettini, he just munched it. Now the question then is, so where if Novak serves, does Berrettini return to diminish Novak's plus one effectiveness?
I still think you want Novak to hit a first ball backhand over a first ball forehand, but let's be real. It doesn't, you want to hit a good deep return. I think, I don't know that that's the thing about Novak. He's so even off of both sides. It's not like Nadal. You definitely want to get that return of the backhand. Federer, definitely, if you can get the return of the backhand, you do it. Got to be careful. You don't want the runaround. And for Berrettini, it's the same thing. And when these two played at Roland Garros, 4-set victory for Djokovic, that's what we talked about. I think on the podcast before the match is, Djokovic has this incredible ability against the Milos Raonics of the world, for example, to take a really big server with a really big forehand and say, well, my return's super good, so you're not going to get a first ball forehand.
Right. So then when Novak serves, I think for Berrettini, particularly on the grass, particularly given bounces, serving games fly by on grass. And so then there come these moments, love 15. Oh, second serve. All right, Berrettini's got to think, I gotta hit a forehand here. Somehow I've got to get a forehand. I'm not going to hit a backhand return. I don't care where he hits that serve, and you run right.
He doesn't do that. He doesn't. Berrettini, and it's a big critique of mine, Joel. You're not going to see him do that. Maybe he'll do it for the first time. Every time I've seen him, every time I've watched a match, he does not do the I'm going to scoot to my left and make myself a forehand on the second serve return. He just hits a backhand.
Well, I mean, and my thing is, if you're going to hit a backhand, which it seems to be what he wants to do, and it comes naturally to him, then hit it to either zone B or C, wherever Novak makes the most errors. That's a big game plan.
Well, right, because you hit it to, yeah, that's true.
That's probably what Novak does a lot of times, actually. Just gets it deep to A, B, C, D, whatever zone where the errors can be found. And out chess move inside that 0 to 4, out chess move the other player.
Well, he's the house money. That's right, because he's the better player. So I'm going deep to C. What do you got, buddy? That's right. Right, what do you got? Yep. So Berrettini has to put himself in position to hit dynamic forehands.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see. I don't think that my main criticism of him really all the time is just, I don't think he's aggressive enough on his second serve returns. And I think against Hurkacz, that was also my main criticism of him, is he just didn't really deal with the backhand second serve return off of Hurkacz's kick very well. So Djokovic will hit that serve, and I mean, it's something I'll have an eye on. I think against Novak, I think you should slice that. I think try to hit a hard slice cross court and make Djokovic kind of move inside the court and hit a low backhand. I don't think he likes to do that. That's what Federer does against Novak. I think it's decently effective, and it'll be difficult for Djokovic to find the Berrettini backhand on the next ball.
I think it's interesting though. And this gets to the interesting Barty comparison. Is I think Berrettini is so aware of playing the backhand in a humble way, but I think sometimes that means he doesn't give the stroke its due. It's proper recognition. So he thinks of it as kind of like, yeah, I'm going to kind of hack this thing over. He uses it some, like against Hurkacz, he had a lot more to use it. But I think you're right. Barty is much more technically dynamic with it, with seeing the slice as a defense, as not as defense at all, as an offense, as a creation thing, not just a neutral this or that. And it's a bona fide shot. And so this is where I want to get on. I want to crack on a lot of instructors and coaches who don't really conceive the slice backhand, don't give it enough of its due to teach it in a way that really gets people deploying it. Because you're right. So there's a good play for Berrettini. He had a really, like Federer does, a really well-carved backhand return to C and say, okay, Novak, let's do something here.
It killed Hurkacz. I think Hubie hated the slice backhand because he kept trying to run around and hit awkward, uncomfortable forehands. So I thought it was a great play.
It would work well again. It would work well against. It works well against a guy like Medvedev. Wouldn't be a bad play against a guy
for
like
sure.
Medvedev.
Absolutely. And Fucsovic, I thought only beat Rublev because he was able to use that shot so well. It's a super important shot. I agree with you, Joel. Everyone should learn it. If you don't have it, it's a problem. Let's talk about pressure. I think that the one difference that I think, Joel, you brought up with Shapovalov versus Berrettini is the simplicity of Matteo's game. And I think that's right. There's very little decision-making that goes on in his game. It's, I see a forehand and I'm going to swing as hard as I can with bad intentions. That's just how he plays, right? And I think that makes him very good under pressure because it's so simple. And for Shapo, there might be more things going on in his mind. So how do we think, it's the first major final, we'll get to Novak next. How do we think Berrettini will handle this moment?
Well, it was interesting. It was interesting in his on-court interview today. He remembered himself. He wasn't even asked about it. He remembered how badly he got beaten by Federer a couple of years ago. I mean, it was just cringeworthy. And the reason that I think that this will be a lot different is because he played Novak recently in a Grand Slam, and he played him decently. He lost in 4 sets, but 2 of those 4 were good sets. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping people are going to be listening to this and they're going to be like, why are you guys trying to strategize for how Novak can be beat? That's not it at all. We want a good match. We're interested. We're engaged, and it is very exciting, the prospect that Novak could be working toward the calendar slam here. So there's that. But I do think that there's the potential for Berrettini to give Novak a really interesting match.
Yeah, I agree. And look, it's exciting. It's exciting that he's come across Novak's playing someone who's young. Again, it's another next gen guy who's got some artillery, who's got some positiveness. He's played Novak close before at the recent major, but we don't know. Yeah, exactly. We want to see an interesting match, and obviously for the underdog, that first set is exceptionally important to really get his teeth into it some. And he's going to have plenty of times in it. Berrettini. There's no way a guy like that is just going to go meekly into it. Even if he loses badly, he's gonna be swinging. He's gonna be throwing some punches. A different kind of opponent than some of them. So on the other hand, think look back, Novak's first Grand Slam win, the 2008 Australian final. Joe Wilfried Tsonga, a Berrettini ancestor of sorts, of style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's interesting. That was almost 14 years ago. It's amazing. I mean,
Yep.
Djokovic still and playing better than he was then.
It's been very hard for these guys in Berrettini's generation, and Matteo's kind of a late bloomer. He's 25 years old. It's been very hard for these guys on this occasion. It's a major final against a member of the big three. This has not gone well. Medvedev made a good showing for himself. He went 5. Nobody's won this match in Berrettini's situation. And, I just think it's hard to play the role. Even if Berrettini gets a lead, it's going to be very difficult to play that role as the favorite on Sunday on center court at Wimbledon against Djokovic. It's going to be very difficult. But I really like what I see from him mentally, generally speaking. It's just this is a different animal. So that's why you have to wait and see, watch the match. Any
It's
thoughts
just
on
the
that?
scope of it all, though. Novak, I was just thinking about this time-wise. He's beaten Federer, who was born in 1981. He's beaten guys born all through the 80s, all through the 90s. Shapovalov was born in the year 2000. I mean, he's beaten 3 decades worth of players. Berrettini a little older than Denis, but still, it's just amazing. And Novak, he does not look. It doesn't look like he's weary in these matches. It's not as if he had lost the first set today. We thought, oh, the old warhorse. He got it in and take on the kid. I mean, he looks daisy fresh out there.
Yeah. Not since Del Potro. I was just scanning my brain. When's the last time a young guy shows up on Sunday, beats a member of the big three, right? Because Wawrinka veteran doesn't really count. I think not since Del Potro.
When Del Potro was 20 and he beat Federer in the 09.
Yes.
That's right.
But then later, when Del Potro faced Novak in the final of the U.S. Open, it was just.
Well, that was 9 years later in Del Potro's career. Yeah, you got to hand it for Del Potro for getting there. And Del Potro,
I know, right?
Oh, everybody loves him. Yeah, yeah.
He's going to be one of these characters. He'll be one of those characters who's just like floated through like a what if. Like every sport has these people, right? Who's like, gee, darn, what if? And he did enough. It wasn't like what if he'd even won. He did win one. He was in there. He beat Nadal and Federer to win that slam, but it's sad.
What about the pressure on Novak? It's 1 away from 20. Ever since he's come back from his injury and won Wimbledon in 2018, I have not seen him lose a match due in any part to not being able to handle pressure or feeling nerves, because he's been a robot instead of a human. And the question is, can he do it again?
He seems to relish the pressure. He seems to feed off of it now. Like, give me more pressure. The one match that I thought that he might have shown some nerves was that loss to Karatsev in Serbia. His brother, I think, is the tournament director, and he had a ton of family and friends there, and may have felt some pressure to perform, and didn't play especially well in that match. But at the same time, if that had been best of 5 or if it had been a Grand Slam, I put my money on Novak.
I disagree. I think he was out of shape. I thought he lost to Dan Evans. I just think it was not in shape, but that's just me.
Okay.
I didn't equate it to nerves. What do you think, Joel, about the pressure with Novak?
When it comes to pressure, Novak has just got so many things organized. It makes me think of when I go on trips and I make this checklist for my house to make sure I've turned off the oven, unplugged this, got this, and then I take a picture, and then I text it to myself. And he has all these things kind of locked in place from warm-up rituals. So much of his stuff is about the preparation to be ready, to be organized, just to compete. And then he knows that there are going to be moments that are going to be pressure, whether it's 4-all, but they're not coming out of the blue. He's been through it so many times, and that experience so matters. So I think he's going to be fine. And if Berrettini's executing well enough to hit that many tremendous forehands, he'll cross that bridge, or as he attempts to.
Right. I almost think when the pressure's on, he's almost thinking, this is great. My opponent's going to play worse, isn't he? Fantastic, because I'm not. It's just how it's felt over the years. Someone said, I don't remember, but someone said some people think the best players get better under pressure. That's not really true. It's their opponents get worse.
Yeah. I would agree with
Yeah.
that. And that's where practice comes in handy about how you practice. You know, one of the things Jimmy Connors said was, if you play every match like it's the big match, when the big match comes, you're ready. So you put yourself in this state of practicing at a high pitch. And I think Novak practices pretty briskly.
Amy, what are you most looking forward to about Sunday's final, Djokovic Berrettini?
I think Berrettini has served so incredibly well throughout this entire tournament. He's got some really wicked placements, and Djokovic is perhaps, I believe, the greatest returner in the history of tennis. So a really hot server who can serve incredibly well at Wimbledon, where the serve is even accentuated, versus the world's greatest returner, that matchup.
That's a great contrast. And of course, then the red flag for Berrettini is if he's missing a lot of first serves early. On the other hand, I guess the green light is if he hits enough serves early in the first 2 or 3 service games, and even he's knocking the racket out of Novak. I mean, he's got a tremendous serve. He's hitting over 120 wide often. I mean, that's something, and we'll see how Novak deals with it. If he can direct it to places too that are going to compromise Berrettini.
Yeah. You took mine, Amy. I mean, that was it for me.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of what it's all about. I mean, I won't make that comparison, but I mean, I'm fascinated to see which weapon there will prevail, because I think more than any other shot in tennis, serve return, it's so like metal on metal, mano a mano, and it's so hard to predict exactly what that's going to look like until they're on the court. And I know personally, I greatly mischaracterized what that would look like for Hurkacz Berrettini. And what Berrettini has done to pretty much all of his opponents is his percent of returns in play are way higher than his opponent's percentage of returns in play. So he's literally having to play less points. That's what his serve and return is doing for him. And can that continue? Because he won Queens. He's in the final here. Ever since Novak beat him at Roland Garros, nobody's been able to touch that serve. I'm fascinated to see if that ends. Joel, do you have one?
Well, no, I just think the whole, I do like that serve return. I mean, look, there's the serve game and there's the return game. The 2 most important shots in tennis by far, and how a player builds forms of mastery of each really shapes their destiny as a player. I think sometimes they get a little lost in the sauce amid things like baseline play and people practicing and playing 11-point baseline games and not really working on the serve and the vanishing of serve volley and get the ball in play and start the rally. But if you really look at it, and maybe we could talk more in the shows to come about the role of the return of serve, about how Novak uses it, how Rafa and Roger use it, and what it really means to deploy it. I mean, I think Novak is one of the best returners. I think are Novak, Agassi, and Connors for different reasons in different eras. Connors had the best return against net rushers. Novak hasn't had to return against many net rushers, but Novak, he would adapt pretty well to that too. I mean, the depth, the direction, the consistency, and the way it helps him commence the point. It's because it's not defense. He doesn't use it as defense. It's his form of offense.
Yep. Well, our 3 are in different places right now. Rafa Nadal has announced he will play the City Open in Washington, D.C. That'll be his first hardcourt event. Roger Federer huddling with his team, considering the Olympics. No decision made. Novak Djokovic still has business to take care of. Tomorrow, Sunday, Wimbledon, center court for 20 against Matteo Berrettini. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. We'll see you next time on the next episode of 3.